It is March 1st, 1896, in East Africa, near the Horn of Africa. Here, the largest battle in colonial history is about to take place. On one side stand the Italians, armed with the latest weapons and military technology. On the other side, the Ethiopian Empire, known then as Abyssinia, led by Emperor Menelik II, weakened by constant provocations from the Italians and significantly inferior in terms of materials and technology. Yet, what drives the Ethiopian people is the defense of their homeland and independence, for Ethiopia is the last independent country in Africa. The rest of the continent has already fallen victim to the greed of European powers. Remarkably, Abyssinia manages to achieve one of the most glorious victories on the African continent on this day. For the first time, an African nation defeats a European power. Menelik II becomes a hero in African history and a forerunner of the later independence movements across the continent. So how did Ethiopia manage to escape colonial rule as the only African state? What set the Ethiopian Empire apart from others? And why is the Italo-Ethiopian War considered a precursor to World War II? We will explore all these intriguing questions in this exciting video. To begin with, Ethiopia is one of the oldest states in the world, playing a crucial role even in ancient times. Many Roman authors referred to the Kingdom of Aksum, Ethiopia's predecessor, as the fourth great power alongside Rome, Persia, and China. Despite this, it was as difficult then as it is now to speak of Ethiopia as a single country. The region has always consisted of numerous different ethnic groups, sometimes competing with each other, sometimes forming larger alliances. Especially in times of crisis, there was a strong willingness to unite to repel invaders. This was a significant difference from other African empires, whose rulers often played against each other or sought short-term profits. Additionally, unlike its northern neighbors like Egypt, Ethiopia was predominantly Christian, leading to frequent exchanges with Europeans since the Middle Ages. Ethiopian rulers were often present at the courts of Venice, Genoa, or Lisbon, making them well aware of European developments. Thus, they were among the first to recognize the threat posed by European expansion starting in the mid-19th century. In 1865, a diplomatic crisis with Britain arose, during which the Ethiopian emperor detained all Europeans in the country, fearing they might incite a revolt or open the door to European powers. The British, enraged, sent an expeditionary force to free the prisoners, which succeeded, making it clear to the Ethiopians that the danger of a major invasion was increasing. Immediate action was necessary, leading to the activation of the emergency plan. All ethnic groups and peoples had to unite despite their differences to resist an external enemy. The newly elected Emperor Menelik II skillfully awarded official titles to autonomous local princes and councils of elders, thereby securing their allegiance. He also imported massive quantities of weapons from Europe to avoid being completely outmatched in battle. In the following years, Abyssinia expanded significantly, aiming to gain as much land and buffer against the Europeans as possible. In East Africa, the Italians, alongside the British, were the main aggressors, approaching Abyssinia's borders from both Eritrea in the north and Italian Somaliland in the east. Initially, the Italians appeared amicable, negotiating a peace treaty and establishing the border between Ethiopia and the colony of Eritrea in 1889. However, in secret, everything was geared towards expansion. At the Berlin Conference on African Colonialism, Italy was granted the right to annex Ethiopia. Taking advantage of an uprising in Eritrea in 1895, the Italians used it as a pretext to invade the neighboring Ethiopian province of Tigray. For Menelik, it was clear that he had to put everything on the line. He assembled a massive army of 120,000 men and armed them with the best weapons he had acquired from Europeans over the years. This somewhat balanced the power dynamics, but the Italians were still technologically superior. On the night of February 29, 1896, the Italians advanced over the hilly terrain, planning a surprise attack on the Ethiopian army. However, they lost their way, with one brigade marching far beyond the target and the others losing contact with each other. At dawn, Menelik launched his counterattack. The Ethiopians encircled and decisively defeated the disoriented Italians. Several factors contributed to the Italian defeat: tactical errors, underestimation of Ethiopian capabilities, and supply difficulties. For Ethiopia, it was an incredible triumph, the first time a European army had been decisively defeated by an African one. Italy was forced to sign a peace treaty that year, recognizing Ethiopia as a sovereign state. Diplomatic missions from almost all European countries established embassies in Ethiopia. In 1923, Ethiopia became the only African member of the League of Nations, the predecessor of the United Nations. This significantly curtailed Italy's expansionist ambitions in East Africa for 4 decades. Unfortunately, this was not the happy ending. The Italians returned when Mussolini took power, aiming to rectify the painful defeat. By then, Italy had consolidated its hold on the surrounding colonies and established proper supply routes. It had also caught up technologically, deploying tanks and combat aircraft. Ethiopia, meanwhile, was weakened by internal crises and no longer as united as before. Ultimately, Italy's victory was secured by using an especially unfair method: poison gas. Mussolini employed chemical weapons, including mustard gas, against Ethiopian troops and civilians, violating international conventions. This war is considered a precursor to World War II, where international rules were broken and elements of total war were first practiced, later used by Hitler in his expansionist wars. Despite the use of chemical weapons, international response was limited to half-hearted sanctions, allowing Italy to advance to Addis Ababa and occupy it by 1936. The emperor fled into exile, and Ethiopia fell. However, historians argue that Ethiopia was never fully colonized. The Italians did not establish a colony or colonial-like structures, but rather a short-term occupation. Soon after, they were embroiled in World War II, an existentially greater conflict. On May 5, 1941, British forces liberated Ethiopia, and the emperor returned to the throne, officially regaining independence. Ethiopia became the first country liberated by the Allies in World War II. Moreover, the Italians never controlled the entire country. Many remote and difficult-to-access regions remained under Ethiopian control, serving as bases for liberation efforts. Thus, Italian rule is seen as a temporary occupation rather than full colonization. Interestingly, Liberia is sometimes also considered never to have been colonized, although historians are less unanimous on this. Liberia was under American influence, intended as a homeland for freed African American slaves. Let us know in the comments if you'd like a video on that topic. That's it. Thank you for watching. We highly recommend you the video about the German exclave South Tyrol. Until then, see you next time, and goodbye.